Right, so dynamic rendering in React. In JavaScript, just in general, how do you evaluate a question? What is your go-to to say, one of two things might happen, I need to do something in either case? What is our go-to tool in JavaScript? Maybe I'm phrasing the question weird. If statement, yes. We use if. Well, this is still JavaScript, so we can still ask if. And you saw an example of dynamic rendering when we did the vacation spots, right? You could check if props is this, render this color, else render this color. Well, right now we've been focusing on one return, right, in components, and that's pretty normal. You can do conditionals inside. You can also have, this is still just a function, and eventually it has to return JSX, but we don't have to just have one return statement in here. We can evaluate multiple things and return different elements depending on what's evaluated. For example, let's say app is passed a prop called greeting, and the greeting is set to the string hello. App's going to receive that. Now, if the greeting is hello, we would like to display a div with a blue background that says hello. But if the greeting is farewell, we'd like to have a div with a red background that says farewell. So there's a few ways we can evaluate this with dynamic rendering. Dynamic rendering is just saying there's multiple things this component could return. Which one is appropriate due to the case it's been given? So the case right now is a props.greeting equal to hello. So if we did this in a really straightforward way, we could just, in our function here, evaluate both. We say if props.greeting is equal to hello, then what I want this component to return is a div that says hello and a background color of blue. But how would I then evaluate? It looks like I already have my return taken care of here. How do I then say, well, if the prop is, farewell, have the same show up, but have this be red and show a different text? What's one way I could do that? Maybe an else if. We can keep asking questions. It's still just a JavaScript function. So what if the props.greeting is farewell? Well, in that case, I want this component to return this div instead. And I'm just going to copy this div because it's the exact same, except the color and phrase. Change this to red. Change this to farewell. So if I were to load this up with npm start right now, what would we see on the DOM? If you said hello, you're probably right. All things, we want to prove it. Hello, sweet. So this is getting returned. How come this is not being returned? Am I doing some sort of like React magic with this function? Is this only going to work in React? Oh, I mean, I guess JSX will only work in React. No, this is just regular JavaScript. I'm doing, this is just a function. We're calling it a component because we're in React. But since it's a function, it can evaluate multiple expressions and tell it what it should return depending on the expression that's evaluated. So if it's farewell, I want to see this div. If it's hello, I want to see this div. So where could I go and what would I change in order to, instead of this showing the blue hello, have it show the red farewell? What would I have to change? One word and one file. One word in one file. Yeah. So let's change. Let's pass a different prop down. Let's say actually greeting should be equal to farewell. Well, app receives this prop, evaluates it, and returns something else. Yeah, fine. This is new. This is new stuff. This is new stuff. This is dynamic rendering. Yeah. I mean, we've seen an example of this with the vacation spots. I'm just now giving it a name and showing different ways that we can evaluate it. But this is like the most longhand way to evaluate it, right? I'm saying if it's hello, return this entire div. If it's farewell, return this entire div. And since only one or the other of these will return, it's still a component. It can just return one of two things, depending on the prop that is passed. Yes, that's where we're going. This is a lot of typing though. So this is draft 1. This is example 1, I'll call it. Let's think of another way we could evaluate this exact same expression, but maybe with less words, less syntax, and a single return statement. So how could I say return if it's good, hello, give us this div. If it's farewell, give us this div. But within one return. And Afami said it, we need to use a ternary statement if we want to do it that way. So we can ask inside of our return, we can ask a question, but how do we tell JSX that we're no longer in JSX land, we're in JavaScript land? Curly brackets. So actually, let's see if we can just do this. Yeah. So curly brackets, we're like, hey, instead of JSX, evaluate some JavaScript for us. And now we can ask a JavaScript question. We can ask, is props.greeting equal to hello? And sorry, I didn't do this right. I do need a div here. Need to tell it to. So now I'm going to evaluate it all within this div. So if props.greeting is hello, what is the symbol in a ternary that comes for my if statement? So if this is true. Yeah, so we'd say if that is true, return the following. Well, I'm going to break this onto its own line so it's easier to read. So here's our question. If this is true, then return this div. All right, but what's this symbol in a ternary for my else statement? Colon. So I can say on the next line, else return this div. And this is evaluating the same thing, just with less if-else statement framework. But this is, I think, one of the simplest ways to follow a ternary inside of JSX is put your question right on the top line. This is what we're evaluating. If that is true, this is what we want. Else, this is what we want. So any questions with that kind of setup? I know it's we haven't seen a ternary inside of a return statement yet. Now, if I get rid of the curly brackets around the entire statement, will it work? No, it's here's your text, and it's returning both divs, just like we asked it to. This is returning a div with all this content. So it's really those curly brackets that allow us to say, no, this is a JavaScript question, only give me one or the other. So I can go back and change this to hello and see it evaluate. So ternary statements inside of your JSX is totally normal. And in fact, later in the course, you'll want to use it because let's think of something, when you go to a website and you're not logged in yet, what button do you usually see on the page? Let's say you're like going to Twitter, but you're not logged in. Will you see a log out button yet? I know I'm asking some tough questions today. Or maybe they're just too straightforward. No, you're not logged in. So you should see a login button. You wouldn't see a log out button. But as soon as you log in, that log out button shows up and the login button disappears. Now it'd be really painstaking to have to code those all separately, where let's say we just had So this is the ternary example. But let's say we had a nav bar in our application. And this is kind of thinking ahead, but it's good. This is the last example we'll do for this, and then cover the mapping. Okay, so we have our app still, and instead of receiving a props.greeting, we're going to send down a props.isLoggedIn and set it equal to false. So they are not logged in. And inside of our application here, we have a nav bar with a bunch of links. I'm just going to use divs to show them right now, but we could use others. We could use A tags, or as we'll learn on Monday, we'll be using link tags. Log out, log in, sign up, and oh, sorry, my keyboard. There we go. Profile. Okay, so I am not logged in right now. Which of these icons should be showing? Log in, what else? Sign up. Log out and profile should not show up until I'm logged in. But then once I'm logged in, what button should be showing? Log out and profile. So when we're not logged in, only these should show. When we are, only these should show. But we don't want to have to make two separate components to handle this. We'd like to do it all right here and let our JavaScript think for itself. And this is a really useful way of dynamic renders. And it's going to bring up a new concept called duaries. A ternary asks an if-else statement. A duary asks an if-then statement. So if this is true, then do this. There's no else condition. So we want to say, if you're logged in, then don't show this. Or if you are not logged in, then don't show this. And we're going to use this prop, is logged in as false. Okay. So first with login, this should show. So how the question we'll ask, we'll still use our props.isLoggedIn, but we don't want to have to do, if you're not logged in, then don't show this. Or if you are logged in, show this. Don't show this. All my words are getting mixed right now. So if you are, this is false, so this should show. So if this is not true, then show this button. And this is the duary statement. This is saying if this is a truthy value, then show this div. And I'm going to wrap every single item in this type of expression. So for log out, would I ask if not logged in or is logged in? Should we show log out when I'm logged in or not logged in? I know we're thinking of these true false things and they get mixed up. I should only see log out when I am logged in. So if props.isLoggedIn is a truthy value, then show me this div. But if props.isLoggedIn is a falsy value, then show this div. And immediately, remember I'm not logged in, the log out button just disappeared. So I'm going to keep this going. Sign up should show when I'm not logged in. So if I am not logged in, show that button or show that div. And if I am logged in, then show this div. And now, based off of my prop, the two things that should be showing when I'm not logged in are showing. But if I go to my index.js and change my logged in status to true, it reevaluates and shows the buttons that I'd expect, profile and logout. So this is the duary. There's no else. You can't chain an else to it. What have we been using the double ampersand for up to now? And, yeah. There's no difference. This is the and symbol. It just can be used in a duary sense because of how the and symbol works. In the and symbol, how many of the expressions have to be true for it to work, to fully evaluate the true? Both. Well, these are all truthy values because they are values. They're not null, they're not undefined, they're not empty strings, they are truthy. So as long as this evaluates to true, then this will as well, and it will show up. So it's using the ampersand in this way to ask a question just because of how it works. It has to check both conditions. And it's really useful to make your components highly reactive without doing a whole lot of extra code. It's just saying only show this if this condition is one way or the other. But this is just to introduce that symbol. Cool. Any questions with those? That's really all we need to cover with dynamic renders. We'll be seeing more examples in code as we go along, but okay.